After 15 years of loneliness, a millionaire's life is transformed when he discovers love with an eccentric artist. James Thornton walked through the bustling streets of the Mission District, his tailored suit sharp against the vibrant street art blooming on brick walls. Yet the colorful murals splashed with life seemed to mock the grayscale world he found himself trapped in. Despite a multi-million-dollar empire, his heart felt like a desolate, empty space. 15 years had passed since the accident. 15 years of meticulously constructed walls. He had become adept at dodging meaningful connections, hiding behind a facade of business meetings and tech conferences that filled his calendar. But with each tick of the clock, an aching loneliness clawed at him, relentless and hollow. As he strolled past an art studio, exuberant colors pulled him in. The urge was foreign, but he succumbed, stepping into a world that felt utterly disconnected from his own. An elderly woman with wild silver hair approached him, eyes alight with unrestrained passion. Angela, she introduced herself. Her energy was infectious, and for a moment he felt something stir within him, a warmth he long doubted existed. "Don't you ever worry about leaving behind a legacy?" she asked, her voice ringing with conviction. The question rattled through his mind like a metal ball in a pinball machine while he struggled to maintain his composed demeanor. Every ping of the question echoed the silent, crushing isolation he had resigned himself to. As weeks turned into monotonous routines of visits to the studio for community activities, the ambitious man who thrived on growth began feeling something unsettling. Each shared story with Angela chipped away at the walls he had built, exposing fears he buried deeply. Her laughter contrasted sharply with the umbra of grief that lingered in his heart, forcing him to confront his emptiness. She spoke of hope and connection. He countered with ambition turned to ashes. Like clockwork, he began doubting his choices. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The pressure mounted when Angela invited him to meet a group of young entrepreneurs, a startup fighting systemic injustices in their neighborhood. It struck a nerve. Here was a chance for him to invest, to blend business with a purpose that transcended profit margins. But it came with a heavy cost. Buying into their dream was not just a financial commitment. It required a moral one that tested his wealthy shell. "What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?" Angela's voice echoed in his head as they stood in that makeshift boardroom, the eyes of hopeful youth boring into him. For the first time, James was caught straddling two worlds, wealth and influence on one side, responsibility on the other. His heart raced. He hesitated, each second dripping with judgment. Just then, insistent vibrations from his phone shattered his contemplation, a familiar buzz sending dread through him. He glanced at the screen, his breath catching. It was a call from his past, one he had dreaded for years. Panic surged as conflicting emotions twisted wildly inside him. Would he retreat into the comfort of solitude stifled by ghosts haunting him, or would he leap into the messy unknown? His mind raced. He stood at the threshold of defining moments, agony and potential colliding violently. James inhaled deeply, steadying himself against the tidal wave of emotion that threatened to engulf him. The reality of the call weighed heavily, a reminder of a life he thought he had buried alongside his late wife. He stared at the screen, the name flashing like a beacon of dread. Memories surged, uninvited and raw, as he idly considered silencing the phone entirely, clinging to the safety of ignorance. But Angela's words reverberated in his mind. "What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?" This was a moment that demanded action. The clock was ticking, and in that instant, his phone became a conduit to a world he thought he could ignore forever. Perhaps this call was his redirection, a chance to confront rather than retreat. With a begrudging click, he answered, "James Thornton." The voice on the other end crackled with urgency, the name of the speaker conjuring a mix of bitterness and nostalgia. It was Eric, a once close confidant turned estranged colleague, the very link to the life he had chosen to abandon. "James, I need to talk. It's important. About the company." Eric's voice spilled with a blend of trepidation and urgency. The company, once a symbol of pride for James, had transformed in his absence into a caged beast gnawing at its own edges. His response was curt, yet curiosity pulled him, weaving against the fabric of his resolve. Why now? It felt almost accusatory, but guilt lurked beneath the surface. "Because it's on the brink of collapse. They need you. I need you." The sincerity drenched in desperation crackled through the phone. He felt the ground shift beneath him, sparking doubt. Could he face that world again? The allure of recognition and control tugged at his motivations for a moment, yet his conscience, guided by newfound reflections with Angela, anchored him. "I can't just redirect my life back to an empire I walked away from," James countered, frustration mixing with something deeper, fear of facing the very past he wished to escape. "Your legacy isn't about bricks and numbers, James. Think about it." The conviction in Eric's voice rang clear, a stark sentence that reverberated within him. "This is not just about you anymore." Metallic taste as anxiety coiled in his gut. Perhaps he was being selfish. It wasn't just his empire at stake. There were livelihoods, dreams that depended upon him. The weight of his past pulsed forward, demanding to be reconciled. "Let me think about it," he replied at last, words tinged with resignation, freeing himself from the immediate decision while the stakes loomed larger than he anticipated. As the call ended, a newfound clarity took root. The echo of Angela's laughter merged with the seriousness of his past. He had to face this crossroads and navigate it with intention. What if he could blend his financial acumen with a cause worth fighting for? With each passing moment, determination kicked in. He had already started chipping away at the insulated barriers he'd erected around himself. The next step seemed blinking like sirens in his mind. Commit to financial aid, partner with passionate individuals, and perhaps rehumanize the very entity that once defined his life. He glanced out the studio's window, sunlight streaming in through the vibrant hues of Angela's art. To build a legacy was to intertwine it with passion and purpose, not just wealth. As he turned back, his heart raced with an unfamiliar longing, an eagerness to embrace connection. But just as he resolved to gather Angela and the young entrepreneurs that had begun to rattle his heart, another aspect of his past surged forward, an email notification blinking uncontrollably on his phone. With trepidation, he opened it. An invitation to a tech conference where industry giants would gather, a chance to present his ideas with Eric poised to annoyingly shadow him. What lay ahead could swing either way, a chance to recommit to the world that had turned cold or to continue on the path of reinvention alongside newfound connections. The choice loomed as palpable as it was complex. Would he embrace it, or allow it to slip through his fingers once more? The crossroads stared back at him as if waiting for the next move. And there it was, his heart leaping into the abyss of uncertainty. What would he choose to define his future? James sat on the edge of his chair, his fingers hovering over the keyboard as he stared at the conference invitation on his screen. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air around him. That familiar surge of anxiety gripped him tightly. He knew attending could mean stepping back into the arena that had once defined him, yet now felt foreign and intimidating. Yet another notification pinged through the silence, another email from Eric, his courage already fading at the thought of sinking into heartfelt negotiations that might lead to emotional turmoil. But alongside that retreat was a thorn of guilt pressing into him harder than ever. If he didn't act, lives would unravel before his eyes. Could a man truly turn his back on a legacy? James leaned back, the creaking of the chair the only sound breaking the stillness. Should he bury his past entirely, or recognize it as a foundation for something greater? Angela's voice floated through his mind, urging him to discover who he truly was now, not the man who ran away, but someone who could build bridges rather than burn them. He closed his eyes, visualizing the conference room filled with industry savants, his name echoing through spaces meant for collaboration rather than isolation. Stepping into that world could grant him the chance to reclaim his professional identity, Not as a cold, heartless executive, but as a mentor, a guide, a visionary. James felt a flicker of determination ignite within him as he considered the potential connections he could foster. With a shaky resolve, he opened the email again. Maybe, he murmured to himself, imagining the conversations that could bear fruit for the company, perhaps even for him. His pulse quickened as he realized that his newfound passion for mentorship and support meant he could bring others along with him. If he attended, he wouldn't be doing it alone. Returning to the company landscape meant he could enlist Angela's perspective, igniting fresh excitement into the tired framework surrounding the firm. The thought of their collaboration stirred a longing within him, a fusion of professional intent and personal connection that had been absent for so long. He clicked on the option to register. The act felt momentous. It was a personal leap of faith. He spent the next few hours polishing his ideas into a coherent vision, words spilling like ink from his mind in a seamless stream. Slowly, clarity piqued his senses. Each concept he weaved was not just a lifeline to the company's future, but a chance to redefine his legacy through community and purpose. Yet moments later, doubt crept back in. What would happen if he failed? Would the ghosts of his past overwhelm him in front of peers he once ruled beside? The fear of inadequacy loomed large, threatening to squeeze the air from his lungs as he tried to visualize standing behind the podium. James took a deep breath, steadying himself once more. This was not just about him. This was about all those waiting for a leader. He mustered his resolve, clenching his fists, and reminded himself that he was not the man who walked away. He had transformed. Hours later, with a sense of revived purpose, James headed to the studio to find Angela. As he entered the sanctuary of her vibrant art, she looked up, her face lit with curiosity. The walls surrounded them with pastels and deep hues reflecting the shifting kaleidoscope of his emotions. "I registered for the conference," he said. The words burst forth unbidden, as though releasing a long-held breath. Angela's eyes widened. "You did? That's incredible!" she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "What's your plan?" James's gaze drifted to her artwork, the colors swirling with intention, mirroring the passion within him. "I want to present my vision for the company, a vision that includes mentorship, growth, and community." He hesitated, feeling the vulnerability settle in. "But I'm still terrified I won't live up to it." Angela's smile faded into seriousness. "You have to use that fear, James. Let it drive you to be better, but don't let it paralyze you." Her words wrapped around him, a soft embrace that mingled support and challenge. For the first time in years, he was no longer alone in his pursuits, but the specter of self-doubt weighed heavily as he contemplated the commitment he was making. What if he stumbled in front of industry experts? What legacy would his failure paint? James felt the air thicken with uncertainty. Could he rise to meet the expectations? The familiar twinge of fear faded slightly, replaced by an undercurrent of belief. If not for him, then for those who believed he could. Yet the moment of truth waited just out of reach as he felt the call of his past collide with the fervor of his aspirations. Whatever lay ahead at the conference, he understood that the real challenge would not be the presentation, but embracing the uncertainties in a world that had once turned its back on him. The realization flowed through him like adrenaline. As he shared plans with Angela, understanding stirred within him. Perhaps the timeline for his transformation began here, weaving through the intersecting paths of love and professional destiny. Would he have the courage to embrace his potential at the conference, or would he crumble beneath the weight of expectation? James knew the answer lay somewhere between the fear of the past and the promise of the future, a decision floating just above the horizon, waiting to be seized. James stood in the heart of the studio, surrounded by vibrant creations that pulsed with life. Each piece told a story, resonating with the kind of passion he had stifled for too long. This moment felt both invigorating and surreal, a reminder of the world he once inhabited but had since abandoned. As he discussed his vision with Angela, an unexpected warmth surged within him. "What if we introduce mentorship circles?" he suggested, excitement palpable in his voice. "We could pair emerging talent with industry veterans. It's a chance to shape the future while enriching their skills. A sector-wide collaboration that could invigorate our company and others. Angela's eyes lit up, reflecting the vivid colors around them. That's brilliant. It's precisely what the industry needs, a culture of sharing and collaboration. You're not just thinking about the conference, you're thinking about the future. The moment ignited an internal fire he hadn't felt in years. As they fleshed out the concepts, he felt a gradual shedding of the insecurities that had entrapped him since the crumbling of his former career. Each idea they exchanged solidified a growing understanding. This was not just a presentation, it was a call to arms. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows on the walls, doubt slithered back. Would executives resonate with the idea or view it as naive? He could almost hear the dismissive murmurs from conference panels of the past. That night, rest eluded him. He tossed and turned, grappling with the implications of showcasing his ideas publicly. The clock ticked loudly in the silence of his room, and each tick felt like a reminder of his impending responsibilities. If he failed, it would not only affect him but the network of talent searching for inspiration. Memories of past failures danced before him, taunting and whispering sweet nothings of inadequacy. He was a ghost in his own life, shackled by remnants of who he used to be. Yet, as dawn light seeped through his window, clarity began to emerge with the light. He was not the same man who had fallen all those years ago. Determined, he grabbed his notebook and began to write furiously. He sketched out ideas for visual aids and supportive materials, crafting narratives that lived beyond mere numbers. Mentorship was a well of possibilities, and by curating meaningful experiences, he could inspire a transformation beyond the confines of a presentation. When he next met with Angela, they dove into the details, expanding on concepts until they shaped like intricate stories ready to be told. As they worked side by side, James noticed how her enthusiasm filled the gaps within him, pushing him to refine his vision. Discussions flowed easily, each moment bridging the professional and personal dialogues he had long neglected. As the days passed, each interaction with Angela elevated his spirits. He began noticing subtle shifts within himself. His stride felt more assured, his voice took on a balance of confidence and humility. They shared laughter over small creative detours and more profound discussions about ambition and vulnerability. The mentorship model blossomed further, becoming their shared mission. However, as the final week before the conference approached, agitation pooled in his stomach. He had put everything into this concept, and the pressure of expectation hovered over him like a storm cloud. On a particularly restless evening, he confronted that shifting tidal wave of anxiety. "Is it worth it?" he muttered to the empty room. Would this endeavor truly change the trajectory of his life and others? Or was it merely a pipe dream that would leave him exposed and wounded? He realized then that this wasn't merely about the conference, it was personal. If he could harness the fear and alchemize it into strength, perhaps he could recapture what he thought he had lost: his self-worth, his purpose, the connections he longed for. As he moved toward the conference, every step reverberated with the affirmation of his growth and the importance of mentorship. Yet amidst this surge of confidence, a new unsettling notion began to rise. Fear of the reception of his vision, the possibility of dismissal, and the stark presence of professional rivals. Just as he was about to enter the conference hall, the weight of the moment weighed heavily on him. Would he find acceptance, or would he face a repelling silence? The tension surged within him, a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation, as he grasped the door handle. Did he truly have what it took to not only present his ideas but embody them? The moment of truth was finally at hand. James stepped through the door and the atmosphere enveloped him like a wave. The buzz of conversation filled the hall, and he was swept into an ocean of faces, some familiar, many not. The vibrant colors of the studio now appeared muted against the corporate backdrop, and the shadows of doubt crept back in. The energy the room exuded felt like a double-edged sword, sharp and promising, yet potentially devastating. He located Angela at the front, a beacon of support amidst the crowd. Her presence anchored his nerves, igniting the spark that had fueled their brainstorming sessions. She caught his eye, gave him an encouraging nod, and that small gesture fortified his resolve. He was here not just to stand in front of an audience, but to influence their perceptions, their futures. No longer the spectator of his life, he was the protagonist, embracing the role he had long resisted. As he approached the stage, the sound of his heart echoed in his ears, each beat a reminder of the stakes at hand. He had poured countless hours into his proposal, crafting it with an intention that surpassed mere career ambitions. It was a message rooted in possibility, in the transformation he wished to ignite not only in others but within himself as well. Taking his place at the podium, he surveyed the room. Executives, peers, and even a few competitors awaited his words. He recalled the myriad times he had faced similar panels before, where the chill of skepticism had extinguished his creative flame. But no, this was different. This felt personal. It was about mentorship, about connecting generations of talent. This concept held potential. It had the power to reshape the industry landscape. Eager to break through his apprehension, he began speaking, his voice steadying as he lost himself in the mission he felt so passionately about. Our industry stands at a crossroads, he proclaimed, where seasoned wisdom and innovative minds can unite to cultivate the next wave of creativity. As he spoke, he found himself not just sharing a plan, but inviting them into a shared vision. The ebb and flow of his words captured attention, and he sensed the room's energy shift. Questions simmered beneath the surface, but with each point he made, showcasing the impact of mentorship, sharing stories of potential underdogs, the initial reservation in their faces began to soften. The silence was palpable. This was not just his presentation, but a dialogue about aspiration and growth. Suddenly a voice cut through the air, sharp and decisive. It was Carl, a prominent rival with a reputation for challenge. But how do you ensure this idea won't become another empty promise? We've seen many initiatives fall flat. There was an edge to his tone that stung, a reminder of past encounters where his proposals had been dismantled. James felt the flush of heat on his cheeks, the pressure of expectations rising like steam. He had prepared for questions, but this one sliced deeper. It wasn't just about the idea anymore. It was a test of his resilience. He took a deep breath and shifted his perspective. What if this challenge could be reframed, not as an attack but as an opportunity for further discussion? This isn't merely a proposal, he responded, his voice steadier now. It's a call to action, a commitment to accountability. With established metrics for success and feedback loops from participating mentees, we ensure that we remain responsive to the needs of our community. The air trembled with curiosity, and a few heads nodded. Encouraged, James pushed forward, weaving personal anecdotes that reflected the very essence of mentorship and connection. His narrative transformed from a presentation to a compelling story everyone in the room could relate to. As he concluded, a mix of applause and thoughtful discourse enveloped him. Although he felt a sense of accomplishment, Carl's challenge echoed in his mind, and he realized it heightened his motivation rather than diminished it. Entering this space, he had stepped into the unknown, but now, as he descended from the podium, he sensed he belonged. His vision had started a ripple effect, capturing imaginations and sparking debate. Yet the lingering uncertainty remained. Would the industry leaders see the potential or retreat to their fortified positions? Amidst the conversations that erupted around him, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. A deeper conflict brewed within him, not just a professional challenge, but a deeper inquiry into his own value and capabilities. What if he was capable of revitalizing not just an industry, but his own identity? With this unsettling thought blossoming, he stepped back into the fray, ready to confront not only corporate obstacles but his own expectations. Would he continue to expand this momentum, or would he falter in the face of this new wave of scrutiny? The night unfurled before him, laden with questions yet to be answered. James moved through the crowd, feeling the buzz of dialogue wrap around him like a comforting blanket. Yet he remained acutely aware of the underlying currents of skepticism that lingered. The applause still resonated in his ears, yet his own thoughts spiraled, oscillating between pride and incredulity. He had spoken from the heart. The words had flowed unrestrained, as if pulled by a force beyond his conscious will. As conversations swirled around him, Carl's critique persisted in his mind, not as a ghost but as a challenge, one that demanded resolution. He spotted Angela again, her enthusiasm palpable. She beckoned him over, excitement in her eyes. But beneath her warmth, he sensed a seriousness. She was as aware as he was of the uphill battle ahead. "You were incredible," she exclaimed. "But what's next? You need to capitalize on this momentum." James pondered her words, wrestling with a looming question. Was he truly ready for the responsibility this momentum would demand? The idea of leading a mentorship initiative flickered like a candle flame in the depths of his mind, bright but at risk of being snuffed out by doubt. "I appreciate the support, Angela," he replied, his voice tinged with uncertainty. "But I've been challenged before. How do I break the cycle of inaction? What if they don't take us seriously?" Angela leaned closer, her gaze penetrating. "You've already shown them your vision. But now it's about follow-up. You need to engage them. Make them part of this." James nodded slowly. It was a daunting task. Navigating boardroom politics was different from captivating an audience with a singular narrative. Yet a flicker of determination burned within him. He could not shrink away from the responsibility that might lift his ideas off the ground. "Engagement," he repeated, his mind racing. He pictured the executives, saw their faces light up at the shared possibilities, but he also envisioned their critiques, the doubts that would question his every move. His ambition was also instilled with fear. A voice interjected, whispering doubts. Could he manage the expectations? Would they support what he was trying to build? His gaze drifted toward Carl, who lingered near the exit, engaged in conversation with an older peer. The seasoned rival was influential, but he could also be a conduit, potentially steering the tide in favor or against James. A surge of competitive spirit coursed through him. Perhaps Carl's skepticism could become an unexpected ally. If he could address Carl's concerns head-on, others might follow suit. "What if I invited Carl to collaborate?" James proposed, surprising Angela as he thought it aloud. "Maybe we can create a prototype mentee program together. If I frame it right, I could turn his critique into constructive feedback and credibility." Angela's brow rose, clearly intrigued. "You'd be giving him a seat at your table. That's a bold move, James. Isn't that what we need? To change the narrative from competition to collaboration?" he argued, the fire within him igniting further. "It's not just about my vision. It's about the legacy we can build together." Angela smiled, catching his infectious enthusiasm. "If you can pull this off, it might establish a standard, the exact shift our industry desperately needs." Every heartbeat felt like an affirmation. Here was his chance, a bridge from uncertainty to action, from isolating doubt to inviting collaboration. Acceptance of uncertainty was daunting, but it sparked new resolve in him. He didn't have a plan yet, but the vision was powerful enough to ignite the flame of possibility. "Let's talk to him," James said, his voice firm. He realized that the success of this initiative hinged not solely on the idea but the alliances he could forge. As they began to approach Carl, James felt the weight of anticipation swell within him. Would he face criticism, or could he forge a partnership that would bolster his concept and bring legitimacy to it? The anxiety blended with a tantalizing thrill. He could either back away or confront the challenge head-on. Each step drew him closer to the resolution of the internal battle he faced, the bridge between insecurity and self-affirmation. But as Carl turned to face them, the initial glimmer of hope was wrapped in uncertainty. What would his rival say? How would he respond to this unexpected overture? Would this confrontation be the catalyst for collaboration, or would it spiral into more skepticism? James felt the moment hang heavy in the air, his heart pounding in rhythm with his throbbing uncertainty. Carl's confident demeanor embodied the years of experience James lacked. He could almost hear the judgment echo in Carl's measured breaths and the slight arch of his brow. "James," Carl greeted, a hint of surprise vibrating through his voice. "Angela, Carl, thanks for making time," James began, fighting against the urge to retreat. "I wanted to discuss an opportunity." The word opportunity unraveled a slender thread of desperation in his voice, but he pressed on. Opportunity, huh? Shouldn't you focus on mastering the art of public speaking first? Carl replied, eyes sharp but not devoid of a challenge. The other executives milling about sensed the flicker of tension and momentarily quieted, the atmosphere thick with curiosity. James swallowed hard, determined to reclaim control over the interaction. Actually, I've been thinking about mentorship. I know your insights could be invaluable. What if we developed a program together? Carl's eyebrows knitted together, skepticism creeping into his features. Together? I didn't envision myself joining forces with you. The rejection felt like a blow, but James inhaled deeply, daring to push back. That's precisely the point, Carl. I want to change how we engage with our colleagues, make it collaborative rather than combative. Your input could reshape that narrative. Silence hung heavy, causing James's mind to race. Was he getting through to Carl? The thought of allowing his rival to co-lead felt unsettling, but he stood firm. If we can create something significant together, it would elevate all of us, breaking the barriers we've been up against. Carl's gaze didn't waver. And what's in it for me? It was a fair question, and James sensed the challenge demanding an answer. Recognition, he replied quickly, realizing he needed to strip away the fluff. You'd be seen as a catalyst for change rather than just another critic. We can give our peers an opportunity to see how collaboration can lead to innovation. Carl considered this, assessing the implications with a calculating demeanor. You think the higher-ups would really back this? Yes, James said, conviction emboldening his voice. But only if we show them a compelling case. Let's workshop, the two of us. We could create a prototype, implement feedback mechanisms, and present a real solution together. The hesitation in Carl seemed to wane, revealing a flicker of curiosity. But James needed more momentum. He had to build on this fragile rapport. Help me. I need your expertise. I'm not naive about the challenges ahead, Carl. I need someone who's navigated the politics, someone I can learn from. You can play a role in changing our workplace for the better. In this moment, James felt a shift, not just in Carl's reaction but within himself. Every word that spilled out of him was a step away from self-doubt and toward empowerment. The fear of rejection was still there, but now it was festering, lined with purpose. Carl's brows relaxed slightly. Listen, I need time to think about this. You don't need to convince me tonight. A sigh of relief coursed through James, though it was mixed with the reality that the battle had just begun. Fair enough, I appreciate your openness. As they parted ways, James felt lighter yet aware that the journey had just initiated. His mind was aflame with strategies to forge this union into something impactful, something that could replace lingering skepticism with collaboration. But as he rejoined Angela, who beamed with pride, his heart was still heavy with unanswered questions. The anticipation of a different future loomed larger than the present uncertainties. What would it take to ensure Carl would fully embrace the proposal, and could he truly redefine their rival dynamic into a partnership that would ripen into success? All these concerns flirted with the edge of his consciousness, like an unsuspected turn in a road, paving the way towards either blossoming cooperation or another tragic defeat. The time had come to face not just Carl but himself, his fears about leadership, collaboration, and what would it mean to transcend competition. As James glanced back at Carl retreating into the crowd, he made a silent vow. He wouldn't let this opportunity slip through his fingers. They would meet again. And next time, the conversation would be driven by a unified vision, or it would be his rebound moment, a stepping stone toward further growth. What surprise challenges awaited as he called upon Carl's expertise? Would the risk of collaboration spell innovation, or rekindle the skepticism that haunted him? James paced restlessly in his apartment, the faint glow of city lights filtering in through the window. The weight of the conversation with Carl pressed heavily on his chest. He replayed every moment, dissecting his words, recalling Carl's reactions like a seasoned strategist analyzing a battlefield. His determination to forge a partnership stirred a mixture of excitement and dread within him. What if Carl rejected the proposal out of hand? And yet, what if this was the moment that marked the turning point in his career? James struggled to suppress the rising tide of self-doubt that threatened to drown his ambition, refusing to let it snuff out the flicker of hope that had ignited during their exchange. As he settled down to draft ideas for the mentorship program, his mind swam with possibilities. He envisioned interactive workshops and brainstorming sessions that would break down barriers, encouraging not just Carl's involvement, but also the participation of others who felt sidelined. He felt a burgeoning confidence. Perhaps this would not only strengthen his own position, but also enhance the culture within their team. Clarity struck him when he realized that his proposal didn't just need Carl, it needed the resonant voices of their peers as well. He grabbed a notepad, jotting down potential participants he could approach. Each name represented a potential ally, someone who could bring diverse perspectives to the table. Collaboration, he reminded himself, was not merely about finding the right partner, it was about building a coalition of minds. The next day he set forth with a calculated strategy. He began reaching out, inviting colleagues for informal discussions over coffee. With each meeting he shared fragments of his vision, gauging reactions, filtering feedback, and subtly planting the seeds of collaboration. He focused on their strengths, articulating how the program could benefit everyone, sharpening his pitch to resonate with those he spoke to. However, amidst these connections, James couldn't shake the growing apprehension regarding Carl. Would he approach their next conversation with the same level of openness? Doubts crept in as he realized Carl's skepticism could transform into resistance. He revisited the core of his motivation. It was more than just professional advancement, it was about personal growth, combating a history of hesitation that had taunted him. Each conversation was a step forward, a rebellion against his own past inertia. Was he capable of changing how he perceived challenges? Could he confront Carl not just as a rival, but also as a potential collaborator? 3 days later, their scheduled follow-up arrived, and James felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He prepared thoroughly, refining his proposal with the insights he'd gained. He wanted to assure Carl that this initiative wasn't solely his own. This was a joint venture, one that would require Carl's unique expertise. The moment came when they found a secluded corner in the bustling office. Carl's demeanor was guarded, but curiosity flickered in his eyes. James started speaking, laying out his refined ideas, weaving in the feedback he'd gathered from their peers. With each emphatic point, he could feel the tension shifting. "Look, Carl," he concluded, "this is your opportunity to step into a role that can redefine how we work together. I'm offering you a chance to lead, not just criticize. We've both seen how ineffective the status quo can be. You have the experience to guide this project toward success." Carl's expression wavered between reluctance and interest, and for the first time, James felt as though he was not just reaching out, but also reaching in. Here was a chance to transcend his previous identity, to emerge not just as a lesser peer, but as an empowered leader with clear intentions. But in the silence that followed, doubt crept back in. Would he be able to withstand the potential fallout if Carl turned him down flatly? As Carl deliberated, fear tickled the edges of James's resolve, a chilling reminder of past failures. He couldn't let the moment slip through his fingers. He needed clarity, and above all, he needed to confront whatever lay ahead. What route would Carl take when pushed to the brink? And how would this impact James's burgeoning confidence as he faced not just his colleague but his very self? The moment was pivotal. It could either chart a course toward collaboration or push him back into the shadows of self-doubt. The door was open, but would it lead to opportunity or defeat? James held his breath, the silence stretching between him and Carl like an unwatched tightrope. Each heartbeat echoed in his ears as he waited for Carl to break the stillness that felt almost suffocating. With every tick of the clock on the wall, James glanced toward Carl, searching for a flicker of encouragement or a sign of decision. If only he could read Carl's mind. Finally, Carl spoke, his voice low but deliberate. "You've put a lot of thought into this, haven't you?" James seized the moment, nodding emphatically. "I have. I believe we can reshape our work dynamic and create something meaningful together. It's about unlocking our potential, not just for ourselves, but for the entire team." The words hung in the air, potent and charged. Carl's eyes narrowed slightly, a mix of calculating and weighing their implications. James felt the palpable tension in his own body, urging him to maintain composure. He had never been this vulnerable at work, and the fear of rejection gnawed at him. "What's in it for me, James?" Carl's tone was skeptical, digging into James's proposal, forcing him to confront potential motives. Was this not just about him? Did he really want this partnership badly enough to expose the fragmented insecurities lurking beneath his professionalism? James forced a calm exterior. "You'll gain influence, visibility, and the chance to lead in a way that showcases your insight. I can facilitate that, but your leadership is crucial. It's a chance for you to step out of shadow. I see potential in you." As the words left his mouth, unease fluttered in his stomach. How had he walked into this confrontation without better understanding Carl's needs and motivations? This was a gamble, one that could either uplift them both or expose James to new layers of his unaddressed fears. Carl remained silent, his brow furrowed as he scrutinized James. The tension in the room thickened. James could feel it pressing against him. He knew he had to push forward. "We've both seen the results of stagnation. I'm willing to put in the effort, and I believe you can steer us in the right direction. But I need you to believe in this too." Carl's gaze softened slightly, and for the first time, he considered the proposal from a different angle, not as a critic, but as a potential co-creator. Still, James could sense the barriers that enclosed Carl's mind. Years spent as a naysayer, a reputation built on skepticism. The question remained, could Carl pivot from that identity? "Let me think about it," Carl replied finally, his voice laced with hesitance yet touched by curiosity. James allowed himself a moment of guarded optimism. While it wasn't the enthusiastic endorsement he had hoped for, it was a crack in Carl's armor. "Of course. I appreciate your consideration. Just remember, I think we'd both gain a lot from this." The conversation shifted then, from ambivalence to tentative dialogue, and as they discussed logistics and potential workshop ideas, James felt the walls around them begin to dissolve slightly. It was hope, the kind he hadn't anticipated finding in that fleeting exchange. As they parted ways, James walked back to his desk, a cautious sense of accomplishment mingling with the butterflies of anxiety. Had he actually managed to unlock a door in Carl, or simply revealed yet another layer of resistance? Doubt clawed at him again, tugging at those familiar threads of uncertainty. But a small voice in him claimed a victory. He had dared to confront his fears. Each step toward collaboration felt like a step away from his past hesitance. Yet the outcome still hung in the air, an unresolved promise. The more pressing question lingered. If Carl hesitated, would James be prepared to pursue alternative paths for the program? James put his head down, determined to keep crafting their vision. However, within him, the burgeoning desire for professional growth wrestled with an internalized fear, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much more complex journey ahead. What would happen if he took this chance for collaboration beyond Carl? Could he gather the courage to present his ideas to other areas of the team, risking total rejection? Where would this new direction lead him? James stood on the rooftop of his skyscraper, the city sprawling beneath him like a canvas waiting for vibrant strokes of creativity. As he gazed out over the skyline, his heart swelled with newfound resolve. Just months ago, he had struggled against the tides of fear and isolation, but now, he stood at the intersection of personal and professional rebirth. He had confronted his past, embraced the call to connect, and hinged his major decisions not merely on ambition, but on purpose. After that hesitant conversation with Carl, James saw a shift. In the days following their exchange, he diligently refined the mentorship proposal, reaching out to peers, collecting insights, and integrating feedback. The conversations sparked innovative ideas that scintillated with promise, each interaction passing like colors in a kaleidoscope. He realized that vulnerability allowed him to bloom beyond the confines of his fears. No longer a lone wolf, he had forged a network. As the complexities of the proposals began to take shape, James felt the insignificance of internal doubts evaporate. He was crafting his legacy. Months later at the industry-wide conference, James stood before an audience brimming with anticipation. This was his moment to showcase the entire mentorship program, co-developed with Carl and supported by a coalition of voices from their team. As he gazed across the attendees, he felt an electricity course through him. The fears of inadequacy had transformed into a compelling narrative, a message where openness and collaboration reigned. His presentation wove the story of the mentorship program with vivid anecdotes, integrating vibrant graphics. Each slide painted a future where collaboration bridged gaps, empowering and inspiring people across the industry. The room reverberated with nods of recognition, and for the first time when he spoke, the room listened, not just because of his status, but because they believed in his message. "We aren't merely mentors or mentees, we are allies," he declared passionately, his voice amplified by shared enthusiasm. As he concluded his presentation and felt a wave of applause wash over him, it struck him. He had not only achieved a professional milestone, he had conquered internal barriers. What began as a challenge to forge connections had blossomed into an undeniable success that punctuated the essence of his transformation. Subsequent discussions led to a commitment from the executive board, and the mentorship initiative was not only embraced but expected, an industry-first adaptable program yielding tangible results within the workplace. James no longer feared being the man standing at the helm of this expansive project. He had become a respected figure capable of bridging divides. Weeks later, during a celebratory team dinner, Carl raised a glass to James, acknowledging not just the success of their program, but James's unwavering courage to engage and inspire others. Carl viewed the project as an opportunity, not only to contribute but also to redefine his own narrative. Together, they were changing the tone within their organization, crafting a culture where doubts transformed into dialogues and competition into collaboration. James understood that the path had once seemed rigid, lined with walls that kept him isolated. Now his journey was marked by resilience and palpable connections. No longer navigating the world alone, he had aligned his professional aspirations with personal fulfillment, a legacy well beyond wealth. This was not just success, it was a fulfillment of purpose. As he lifted his glass among friends, James felt profound gratitude. He had not only rebuilt bridges, he had created a vibrant community dedicated to growth. There was tangible satisfaction in seeing how his transformation had impacted not only himself, but also sparked a cascade of change among his peers. This was the rebirth of James Thornton, a man once anchored in isolation, now a dynamic leader thriving in connection. With a confident stride, he stepped into the future, unstoppable and resolute, ready to continue fostering connections for depth beyond mere legacy. This is your moment too. If you found inspiration in James's journey from isolation to connection, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and light up our channel by leaving a like. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful story with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Comment now with your thoughts or theories about this transformative journey. Stand with us and become a part of our movement towards personal overcoming stories.